Hello and welcome to freephotoshop.com and this week's video tutorial on how to create a vignette effect to use with a photograph. Now last year when my granddad passed away, I decided to make the service sheets for the funeral, and this image here ended up being the final version of the front cover. And as with a lot of service sheets these days, I decided to put a photograph of my granddad on the front cover. But instead of having just a standard block photo pasted onto it, I wanted to give the photograph a little more style, but also something that would look natural and fit in nicely. Now, bearing in mind this is a funeral service sheet, I didn't want to add too many prominent graphics or let the amount of colours run away from the sombre mood of the funeral. So I went for the basic but really effective vignette effect, where we've just got the main photograph fading away into the colour of the paper. Okay, I'm going to minimize this image and maximize this one, which is a master version of the image I used on my granddad's service sheet. Now basically what I have here is a background layer which I've just added a light blue fill to. Then I have the photograph of my granddad, and I've actually gone and taken the background out of this image so that it just sits quite nicely on my own custom blue background. And if you wanted to use the original background with the photograph, there's no problem with that. It just means that you've got less work to do, which is good. If you decide to use the original background, then you won't be able to add a glow around the subject, as I've done here. Once again, you don't need to add a glow, but I quite like how this one turned out, and it makes the image, I think, look a lot more pleasing to the eye. Finally, I've got the layer which turns the image into a vignette, which nicely fades the image into whiteness, which was the colour of the paper I used. Okay, I'm going to turn all the layers back on and then turn off the visibility of the top fade layer. Now I'm going to select the photo layer and add a new layer to the composition by clicking the new layer icon down here at the bottom of the layers palette. Now with the new layer selected, I'm going to come up to the tools palette and select the elliptical marquee tool. Now I'm going to come over here to the center of the subject's face and click and drag. Now if I hold down the shift key whilst I'm dragging, I'm going to restrict the creation of my selection to a perfect circle. But I'm not going to do that as I want an elliptical shape in the image. What I am going to do though is hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac to make where I started dragging from the center of the ellipse. Once I'm happy with the selection, I'm going to release. Now at the moment we have everything inside the ellipse selected, but I need the opposite to be happening. So I'm going to come up here to the Select menu and choose the Inverse option to inverse the selection outline. Now we have everything selected outside the ellipse. Now we need to feather the selection outline, and this is basically going to be the amount of fade that's added to the image. I'm going to come up here to the Select menu once again, and from the Select menu I'm going to select the feather option. Now your photograph will almost certainly be a different size than mine, and that's going to make the value we enter here different from what I'm putting in myself. I'm going to use a value of 50 pixels and click OK. Once again, your value in pixels may be completely different to mine. Now I do need to select the colour I want the image to fade out to, and as discussed earlier, I want it fading out to white, which is the colour of the paper. To do that, I'm going to select the foreground swatch to reveal the Adobe Color Picker. Now for white, I'm going to drag the colour selector to the top left corner like so, and you can double check that you've got white by taking a look at the RGB color values over here, and all three of these should be reading 255. I'm going to click OK to load white as my foreground color. Then I'm going to select the paint bucket tool, and I can either do that by selecting the icon in the tools palette or by hitting G on the keyboard. Then I'm going to fill the selected area, and because we added that feather earlier, we end up with a nice vignette effect on this photograph. If it's not exactly what you're looking for, then simply go back to the point where you added the feather size by either hitting Ctrl-Alt-Z on the PC or Command-Option-Z on the Mac, or by using the History palette available from the Windows menu if it's not open already. Well, I hope you found this tutorial on freephotoshop.com to be helpful. Thanks very much for watching.